Hi, I'm Professor Shaheen Hamdy. I work at Salford Royal Hospital as a gastroenterologist, and I'm also a clinical academic at the University of Manchester.
I'm Alistair Williamson. I'm the Director of Lucid Group, a medical device development and manufacturing business. And we want to talk about Anisys GO and where the need came from. Why is Anisys important, Shaheen?
Well, it goes back to my clinical practice. So I see a lot of patients who've got problems with anal disorders, fecal incontinence, constipation, many issues. And a lot of these patients have been suffering for years with their symptoms, often finding it difficult to approach their clinicians with the issue. When they finally do, they discover that there's a lot of complexity to actually getting themselves sorted out. So they might go to their GP. The GP might refer them on to a bowel and bladder management group. Of course, in those centres, they have very little in the way of facilities to deal with these patients. They don't have any technology. A lot of it is simply taking a history and doing a physical examination. And so in that situation, the patients then get stuck in the system, so they then have to be referred to the hospital to be sorted out. And that takes time. It delays treatment options. So going back to my sort of previous interests, I was particularly interested in understanding whether we could improve that pathway, and in particular seeing if the technology that we currently have, which is all hospital-based, could be transformed into something that can be used either in general practice or in a bowel and bladder clinic, or even in a separate office. And so I was particularly interested in that and spent probably about a decade looking at different aspects of the mechanisms of fecal incontinence to try and establish whether we could develop a device that could pick up all of these different abnormalities physiologically, but in a much smaller package. So I spent that time simply working with groups to see if we can work out whether we can simplify, reduce, make more user-friendly a device. And I went and approached an innovation group who were based at the University of Manchester, who said they were interested in the same concept. So I went with them and was introduced to my colleague here, Mr. Williamson, who part of Lucid, and said, can we develop a device that can actually do the same thing that happens in the hospital, which is anorectal physiology, but in a much more simpler, more effective, more user-friendly, and also perhaps cost-effective method. And so that took us to some proof of principle work, and then we went on to start to develop.
The University of Manchester connected us and saw the value in investing in some early concept development, which we used as to help facilitate grant applications. And one of those was an application for some NHS money through a Small Business Research Initiative award, which we were successful in obtaining. And that got us to the stage where we could build a prototype which clinicians could use. And we assembled a team, a multifunctional, multidisciplinary team of pelvic floor specialists, of bowel continence care nurses, of physiologists, and Shaheen was involved in proving the principle of this prototype, which we've now developed into a device that we manufacture here at Lucid. And we've been through the UKCA accreditation process, and we're about to launch internationally.
So just to finish off, I think it's important to mention that in terms of developing this device, this is not just simply about finding something that's going to be effective in the patients. It's also to try and improve the NHS as well, because going back to my point, a lot of these patients are stuck in waiting lists. They have to be referred to secondary care centres or even tertiary care centres. The waiting times for that are often enormous, and since COVID have actually worsened. These GI physiology units are often overwhelmed. They're not always well staffed. And so transferring some of that care back into the community is pretty critical. We just don't have a device that can do that at the moment. So what Alistair is doing, what we're trying to do is develop this device so that it will allow us to not only take it to the patient, but also reduce those waiting times as well. So what we found is that in engaging with the clinicians, and as we've heard, this includes colorectal surgeons, GI physiologists, pelvic floor therapists, physiotherapists, is that the device has been received very enthusiastically. There's particular interest in its role in biofeedback as a therapy, and indeed there is now a real interest in trying to see this device being used at the bedside in patients to reduce waiting times and hopefully improve cost savings within the NHS, which is absolutely crucial. And so we look forward to hopefully working with you together.